hear well? Okay. I would like to start with a prayer and looking at this image of Christ, and it's from the letter to the Hebrews. So in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. When Christ came into the world, he said, "Sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you prepared for me. With burnt offerings and sin offerings you were not pleased. Then I said, here I am, it is written about me in the scroll. I have come to do your will, my God. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, never shall be, world without end. Amen. Father, and the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen." So I wanted to start with this you see, is the El Greco, the disrobing of Christ. I will comment some on this text. So I want first to give you an introduction of the topic. I'm going to speak like for about 45, 50 minutes, and then we'll have questions and answers. Is it good? Now? Can you hear at the end? Yeah? It's good? Okay. Let's see. If not, you raise your hand. So I was saying we wanted to introduce the topic first. And so as you know, this sentence by Maximus the Confessor, this father of the church, he said, Christ, we Christians know a lot about charity because we have as the master of charity, charity herself, or charity itself, which is Christ. So this is the inspiration of the title for this lecture. And I wanted to put together these two topics. This is by way of introduction. The topic of charity and Christology. Because I think, and this is important, that we are in the church, in society now, in a moment in which these two questions have become crucial and very much debated. What is charity, and how Christ can illumine the meaning of charity? So, and I think if we focus in these two questions, we understand also, as is in the title, the wounds of the church today, and also the hope for the church today. We know there is a certain doctrinal confusion in the church, so what are and it's important for us as theologians, philosophers, Catholics, to understand what are the key issues. And I think here we have, the first is what is charity, what is love. We have this interesting, there's this famous philosopher Italian, Gianni Vattimo, who is like one of the founders of postmodernity. Vattimo is the thinker of what he calls weak thought. So we need to forget about the truth, about metaphysics, because that's too strong. And we live now in a time in which we need to look for other forms of thinking that are not so strong. So it's weak, he calls it weak thinking. And then he passed away 1 year ago. And he had this idea, and he wrote in a dialogue with another philosopher, the idea of a weak faith. Weak faith. Vattimo was an atheist, but then he came back to the Catholic Church, he converted, but he called himself an atheist Catholic. So you see that is a bit problematic, the whole thing. So because what he thought is, what is Christianity about? Christianity is about charity. So forget about the truth. The truth separates us from the others. What we need to do is to simplify the faith and to focus on charity. And charity is what is important. So charity becomes also the way to understand Christ. But the question is, what is charity? It says, well, charity is helping others. But this is already a problem. What is the connection between charity and truth? Now, this is a philosopher who clearly is his way of loving. No, he was active homosexual, and he get married with another man before dying. But what is his idea of love? It's an important philosopher. In Italy, he was celebrated a lot. Also, many priests and bishops and theologians, after his death 1 year ago, wrote articles. This is really Christianity. He was a real Christian, because in today's world, truth, you cannot talk too much about truth. What is important? He got it right, because it's the cross and the charity in the cross, and the cross teaches us to be humble. So we need to forget about. You see the problem here. So what is charity? What is the real charity? What we are talking about when we talk about charity? In the readings, you have also well, I understand it was a lot of reading, so, but you have it for further research if you want. And there was an article precisely about the topic of charity, this time talking or in dialogue with the now Cardinal Fernandez, who is prefect of the Dicastery for Doctrine of Faith. It was a dialogue with him as a theologian before he became a bishop, and his idea of charity. And there you see like some problems also that relate to the theology of charity. What is the connection between loving God and loving your neighbor? By loving your neighbor, are you already loving God? What is the connection between charity and truth? Is there a truth of charity, or charity is what is important, the truth separates and charity unites? What is the connection, just some questions randomly, what is the connection between charity and the 10 Commandments? The 10 Commandments are about justice, so is charity greater than justice? Can we go against the commandments because we love? Well, you will say no, but well, this is a challenge. Are not the commandments just the justice, and charity goes beyond them? That's the question, the kind of questions that are involved here. Also, the relation with the sacraments. Can we give the sacrament, the Eucharist, to everyone, even if he's living just in a situation of sin, for example, just because of charity? Charity trumps also the sacramental order? That's another question. So all these questions are here, and I think are very important today. So I want to take these questions and to put them together with the question of Christology. So Christ as the master of charity, not only the master because he teaches about charity, but also, in a sense, it's not exactly, but charity in the flesh. And I will try to explain that. So charity in his own way of living, charity in action. And I think Christology is also important because we find also a crisis in the confession of faith in Christ. It's coming also to that. It's really Christ, the Savior of all human beings. Who is Christ, really? Pope Benedict, when he wrote his book on Jesus of Nazareth, he said, I wrote this book because people find it difficult to imagine Christ. No, this after some years, many years of research about the life of Jesus, historical research, it seems like it's very difficult to know the real Jesus. So at the end, we have lost the capacity of imagining him together. There is no a common imagination of Christ, and therefore, if there is not a common imagination of Christ, then Christ is not alive in our common life and in our projects, in our future. That's the crisis of Christology comes also from this lack. Next year we have the anniversary of the Council of Nicaea, proclamation that Jesus is the Son of God, equal, consubstantial to the Father, equal. And it's 700 years, so it's an important moment for research into Christ. And we have also the Jubileum. That's 2025 years of the birth of Christ. So there's reasons to go back to Christ, and we find the same thing, the same difficulty. There is this idea that charity explains Christ, but what charity? I remember when I was writing my book on marriage and the theology of marriage, I came across a Protestant theologian who had written a commentary on Matthew, on the book of Matthew, on the Gospel of Matthew. And he came to this point in which Jesus teaches that divorce is not possible. You should not, what God has joined together, let man not separate. And this Protestant scholar said, well, we need to say this is what Jesus said. This is real, even by all standards, this was a teaching by Jesus. He was absolutely contrary to divorce. He acknowledges that. But then he says, well, in my Protestant confession, I accept that divorce is possible, and how I can accept this teaching of Jesus. He says, well, now, the message of Jesus was love. What he taught us is to love. And in this concrete point, Jesus is in contradiction with his whole message of love, because he was too rigid with the... It's written. It's an important scholar, but he has written this way. So I have an idea of charity, which is the whole gospel is about love. And now I find some contradictions between Jesus and this vision of charity, and then Jesus, in this point, I cannot follow him, because he's in contradiction with himself. Well, this is a problem. Who is the one who tells us about charity? Is Christ the teacher? I think and I finished the introduction, I think for me, the most striking example of this contradiction between charity and Christ is the movie Silence by the director Scorsese, Martin Scorsese. He wrote this book it's about the martyrs in Japan. I don't know if you have watched it. It's a difficult thing to watch. I have friends that couldn't watch it. It was too strong for them, because it's about a Jesuit who goes to Japan to evangelize. There are many martyrs, and then he's going to apostatize from the faith. And so why is he going to apostatize? Because when they are torturing him, well, he's strong in his faith, but then they start to torture the Japanese. And therefore, before the suffering of, it's difficult, before the suffering of the Japanese, they say, well, if you apostatize from your faith, we will save them. And then he has to step on the cross. There is a cross, they put a cross, he has to step on the cross. And the drama is that finally he steps on the cross, just to save these people. So Jesus himself tells him, step on me. Oh, it's very strong. No? It's like it has this discernment, this vision, that Christ is asking him to step on the cross, say no to his faith for charity. So what is this possible? I mean, we know that it's not possible. You cannot renounce your faith, but this is the idea of the movie is that. So there was a theological advisor for this movie who said, well, we wanted to show that life is not black and white, and there are difficult choices, and so you can say no to Christ because of charity. Because Christ said, if you confess me before men, I will, and this has been the doctrine of the church, that Christ himself asked us to give a confession of faith, and therefore of the cross. And you step on the cross because of charity. What is this charity? So this is the question. Now, as a method, I want to take 3 steps, which is, so to enter into Christ and to see Christ acting, so is charity in action. What I think is the best way is to look at one moment of his life, which is like the way to enter into the mystery of Christ, the best way, because it's the way he indicated to us. I think that Christology, so the entering into his mystery, needs to start with the Eucharist. It's in the Eucharist where Jesus asks us to keep the memory of him. This is, Cardinal Ratzinger called him, when he was a theologian, an Eucharistic Christology. Eucharistic Christology. And I think that you can do the whole mystery of Christ is like contained in the words of the Eucharist, which include, of course, the cross and resurrection, because the Eucharist is already anticipating his death and resurrection. So it's like a summary of the whole preaching of Jesus is summarized in these words. And not only his preaching, but also his mystery, that he is the Son of God, that he became man, that he died for our sins, is all there. It's also how Jesus was a genius, was able to summarize his whole life in these simple words and actions. So what I want to say is that also the mystery of charity has to do with these moments. The first moment is Jesus thanking the Father for the life that he is going to give him. And in the Eucharist, the first thing he did was thank you. He blessed the Father. And this is this image. So Jesus towards the Father. This is the first. And I think that in the Eucharist, when he blesses the Father, he is presenting himself as the eternal Son. Then the second moment is when he gives us his body. He says, this is my body for you. This is the body that's given for you. In this moment, he's teaching that he became completely, perfectly a human being, that he assumed our human nature, and he became one with us in order to save us, to communicate to us his life. But he assumed that's the second statement. And he assumed our body, our humanity, in order to bring into his perfection. And the third point is his words over the blood, the cup. This is my blood, given up for you. He redeemed us. So the whole soteriology, the way in which he redeemed us, is contained in this third word. So I think here you have like, what I want to do is to show that in these 3 moments you had the whole of Christology, and that each of these moments teaches us something essential about charity. So if you follow this line of thought, then you know also what charity is all about. What is charity? So the mystery of Christ is connected with his charity. So that's the. I start with the thank you of Jesus to the Father. You know, that the Eucharist, if you look at the form of the Eucharist, of course it's the Last Supper, it's like eating together, but there is behind one sacrifice typical of the Old Testament, which is the sacrifice in which Jesus gives thanks to the Father. This is a sacrifice of thanksgiving. This is one sacrifice. You find it in the book of Leviticus, chapter 7, 12. Leviticus 7 is when you had to give thanks to God because he had rescued you from a mortal danger. So this is a sacrifice you offer when you have been saved. You promise God something if he saved you from this situation. And then in this moment, the sacrifice was to offer bread and to share. Of course, it was an animal as well that was offered, but the bread was shared with the friends as a sign that life had been received from God. And now, if you look, this is the spirituality also in many psalms, especially in Psalm 21, which is the Psalm of the Passion, which is how Jesus is part is. No, they divided my clothes, my tunic. But then at the end, he ends this psalm, which is how they crucified the Messiah. At the end, it ends up with a sacrifice of thanksgiving. I would offer to you a sacrifice of thanksgiving with my brothers, he says, with my brothers. So this is what is behind the Last Supper. It's a sacrifice in which Jesus is giving thanks because the Father has rescued him from a mortal danger. Now you can ask, well, this is not true because he's going to die. So why is he offering thanksgiving for something that he has not received from the Father? In the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 5, you find this prayer of Jesus. The letter to Hebrews says that Jesus asked the Lord to liberate him from death, and that the Lord, because of his piety, listened to him. So he actually gave him life. So the difference from the rest of the Old Testament is that in this sacrifice, Jesus is not giving thanks for something that has happened, but he is anticipating the final giving of life. And this is what changes the perspective of the Old Testament. Jesus is giving thanks, he's so sure about the love of his Father. So the love of his Father is so foundational for him, and the relationship with the Father is so strong that he can assume that the Father will listen to him in advance. And not only in advance of a danger, but in advance of actually going through death. So that's what separates Jesus from all the people in the Old Testament that offered a sacrifice of thanksgiving. You find the same thing in the resurrection of Lazarus, remember? Before resurrecting Lazarus, Jesus says, Father, I give you thanks because you always listen to me. So it's like the method of Jesus. This reveals that the connection between Jesus and the Father is so strong that overcomes our filial relationship with the Father. And he's pointing, and because Jesus is not only going through death in this sacrifice and in his understanding, is going to the Father. So the most important is not death only, but that his final goal is going to be the Father. So it's going. This overcomes every human capacity. He's going to reach the Father himself. Now, when Jesus says that he's going to die, in the Gospel of John, for example, he doesn't say, I'm going to die. He said, where I am going, you cannot come. And then people say, well, he's going to commit suicide. He's going to die. No, I'll go and die with you, says Peter, when he listens to these words. Where Jesus is not only, why he's not saying, I'm going to die? Because for him, the goal is not death, it's beyond. And this beyond is God himself. This overcomes every human possibilities. Therefore, in these simple words of Jesus, in this sacrifice he's offering, we have already, in a nutshell, that he is the Son of God, the eternal Son of God. Because nobody can reach so high, can reach to God, if he does not come from God. So we have here the teaching of the Council of Nicaea in the Last Supper, which he said that Jesus is consubstantial with the Father. You see, that's the key point of this. We learn from the Eucharist. And this is already an illumination of charity. Charity, the love of God, is going to be always filial. We are not the one, we haven't, it's not we that have loved God first, but he loved us. That's very important. I'm going to refer also to 1 Corinthians 13. You remember the the great hymn to charity of St. Paul. I'm going to show you a better path. There are many charisms. I'm going to show you a better path, and this is the path of charity. And then he starts to say, what is charity about? Charity is patient, charity is good with service others, and then what is not charity, and so on. But so the whole idea about this song of charity is not our own efforts, it's the gift of God. This is why is talking about the charisms, the gifts of God, and then he starts to talk about charity. So the assumption is that all that he's saying about charity comes from the Father to us. He loved us first. That's crucial for all the theology of charity. And here is filial. The Son receives everything from the Father. You go to the beginning of the Last Supper in John 13. What you see there is Jesus is saying, in the moment in which Jesus knew that the Father had given everything to him, and that he came from God, and that he was going to God, then he started to wash the feet of the disciples. So it's the Last Supper is connected with this filial dignity of and therefore is what we have here is that the love of God is foundational for all that is charity, and that the love of God comes from God to us. Now, let me add something here that is also crucial. This love, what Christ is giving thanks to the Father, so his relation with the Father is very much connected with the resurrection and with the body that Jesus has. So the gift that Christ is going to receive from the Father refers to his body. Jesus is thanking the Father because he's going to give to him the risen body. Here I have read Hebrews 10, and where Jesus, when he enters into the world, he said, "A body you prepared for me." So the love of God is present to us in our bodies. That's something that the Eucharist is teaching us. Is very, very special. What is the meaning of that? Why my body is connected to God the Father? Now I think that this is part of the language of the body, of our bodies, and that Christ is teaching us. The body is a place in which we understand that God is the original giver of our life. So we don't reach God directly with our heads. There is a way in which our body itself is telling us about God. One could imagine, and some philosophers have done so, that my mind comes directly from God, is a part of God's essence, and therefore I participate with my mind in God's essence. It's like coming from God. Nobody has said that my body is part of God's essence. My body is something new, and it's not. If the body comes from God, it's because He has created it from love. My body, John Paul II says, the body is the witness that creation is a gift. In my body, what I have not created, what I have received, it was there before I started to think, before I started to love and to do things and to will. It was the body there. Either it is a gift that I can accept, or it is something that is alien to my identity. No, so the body has this capacity to put us into contact with God. This is part of the mystery of the incarnation. And what Jesus is saying in the Last Supper is, my body will reach God. In the resurrection, this body that is so, what is the body telling us? No, what tells us is we are dependent, that we are not masters of ourselves. The body teaches us that things can affect us from outside. You think that the body is also all the capacity of activity. We can be touched by the events that happen and be changed as well by these events. Because of the body also, we can be in contact with others. We can have a covenant. In marriage, you see that very well. Man and woman become one flesh. So the body is a place of encounter. And also in the body, there is this desire to go out and to help others, to love them. Here maybe we can, and here you have this image, we can go to what is the heart. The heart is the body, in as much as the body is understood as a gift that has been received. and as something that can be given to others. This is John Paul II again. He says, the heart is what allows us to understand that the body has a language of receiving oneself and a capacity of giving oneself to others. So the heart is the body only in the dimension of a gift received and given to others. So here in this image, which is a Christ that is from El Greco, you see, I mean, it's like the Passion. All the Passion is here, is represented, is the disrobing of Christ. But you see the red here is very important because it represents, in a sense, it's like a heart. You see, it's a form of, it's red and it has a little bit the form of a heart. Jesus is with the hand here, it's like it's the heart as well. So you see the hand of Jesus is placed on the heart and he's looking up. It's like a symbol of Jesus' love to the Father in his human heart. And that's part of the Last Supper. No? He has been loved by the Father in his bodilyness. This is important because it teaches us that our connection with God through charity is not only intellectual, but it is the foundation of who we are. God has given us our body, our capacity to love, and it's foundational for our own identity. We have received ourselves from God, and therefore, like the love of God takes absolute priority, because it's a love that has put us into existence. We understand a little bit that with the analogy of our parents. No? We owe to our parents our life and our bodies, but we ultimately know that our parents are not responsible for our bodies. They have loved us. Our bodies come from the love, through the love. But my parents didn't decide to have me as their child. So my body can be explained by them, but not totally. Only they decided to be open to life, and I came, but they didn't know whether it was going to be a boy or a girl. They didn't know exactly. They were open to receive me as I was. There's only one who really not only decides to have a child, but decides to have me concretely, and this can be only God. And the body is a witness to that. If I can accept my body and embrace my body, it's because there is this connection with God. Only if there is a creator can I say my body is mine, totally. I can accept it as something that has meaning, that does not come just from evolution, does not come just from, chance. It has a personal design. It's given, and then I can accept it totally, because it is related to a gift of God. So that means that the love of God is foundational. Thomas Aquinas says that when we love someone, we love it through the love of God. It's not that we love someone to love God afterwards, but God is between us and the person we love. It's because God has created my body, my capacity to love. He has given this body to myself, and it's thank to God that I can meet the other person. It's different when we know another. In order to know God, I don't know him directly. In order to know God, I first know the things of the world, and then finally, mediated by these things, I know God. So God is not immediately known, because to know means to bring into me God, and it takes a mediation, it takes time. But Aquinas says this is true of knowledge, but of love is not this way. The first thing we love is God, because in love we are not bringing something to ourselves, but are going outside ourselves. And the first thing that we desire, the good in itself, is God. So that's just to say the importance that has this. What Jesus has done is to take our bodiliness and to live it in a new way in relationship to the Father. So that now our bodies can contain the love of God himself and the gift of God himself to us, of the Father himself to us. Now here, let me show just by way of comparison. This is another painting by El Greco, which is a nobleman who is taking a religious vow. He's taking an oath. And you see, it's interesting, it has these two paintings. They have nothing in principle to do with one with the other. But here you see that this nobleman has the hand in the heart as well. He's doing this religious vow to God. And you see, it's the same position of Christ. So this man who can represent our humanity, our body, that is in relationship with God, because God has created us, and how God has assumed the same position, Christ has assumed our same position, but now it's red instead of black. He has elevated it to a new level. So now in our bodies, we are not only have a relationship with God, the Creator, but we have a relationship with the Father who has given himself totally in the Son. And this is charity. Charity is to love with the same love of God, with the same mystery of the love of God. Okay, so that's the first point. Said, well, this is a painting by Julia Stankova, a Bulgarian artist, who is called a short circuit. And it is trying to say, you see the angels there. So this is someone who has a body, and this is God, the hand of God. And so it's the angels. Normally, man would be mediated by angels to reach to God. There will be like many, this is also in the Old Testament, Moses, in order to see God, there are the angels first. They are mediators to God. But now with the incarnation, there is like a short circuit. The body itself can be the place where we meet God, where we find God. This is what this artist has tried to show. Okay, I'm going now to the second point, which is how Christ, so this is the primacy of the love of God in charity. But now we have these other words of Jesus, that is the second aspect of charity, when Jesus says, this is my body for you. And here again, now it's not the relationship with God, which is foundational for charity. Charity is that God himself is given to us. But now is the relationship between Jesus and us by taking up the body. Well, again, what is the body? The body, why the Gospel of John doesn't say he became man, he became a human being. And it says he became flesh. Because we can think, well, it will be easier to, or have been easier to say he became a human being. And many complicated discussions also of the fathers of the church would have been avoided. So it would have been much easier to say he became a human being, a complete human being. St. John says he became flesh. Why? Other thing is the why of speaking. It's not immediate. So I think, so behind this, the flesh in the Bible is the place of our humanity in which we are connected with others, open to others. As I said before, it's our humanity in as much as it's not alone, it's not by ourselves, in as much as we share something with others from the very beginning. Because we have a body, we belong to a family. And the body is the sign that we belong to this family. And because the belonging to this family is good, we can say, my body is good. If we're born in a family in which everything is terrible and we want to go away from our family, we would want to go away from our bodies as well. Because the bodies make connection with my family. That's why it's so important that family life receives and welcomes the child. Because the relation with the family is going to be the relation with my own body. So you see, the body is a place of openness, of relationship. So when Jesus says, when St. John says the word become flesh, what his meaning is, he entered into this web of relationship. He's one of us. His life is our life. He's one of our family. His destiny is our destiny. He's sharing our last name. No, like when you enter into a family, you receive the last name of the family. So Jesus is, and so he's highlighting this communion of Jesus with each of us. By entering into the flesh, he was able to touch, because we are in the end we are of the same family. We come from the same ancestor, and we are all, because of the body, families with each other. So that's I think that besides, St. John is following the Eucharist, because Jesus said, and this is words by Jesus, you need to eat my flesh, and if you eat my flesh, you will abide with me. So St. John is following this word of Jesus. He's faithful to what Jesus didn't say, I became flesh, but he said, eat my flesh. And so St. John understands that in order for us to eat the flesh of Jesus, this is what is crucial. It has become one of us in the body. So that's, now this is important for charity. See, this is a Christological dogma of Chalcedon. He became perfectly human, and he did that by entering in the flesh, in our bodies. Now this is important for charity. Charity is not loving someone who is like us, but it's loving someone who is close to us, which is a bit different. We don't love the others because they are like us, because sometimes they are not like us. And I can see, for example, a person with disabilities. We say, well, I'm not similar to him. I don't need to love him because he's not like me. He doesn't think, for example. It's not this capacity. So, well, I'm not going to love him because he's not like me. Well, this is not the key. You don't love the other, this person, because he's like you. The real reason is that his body is connected with your body. You come from the same source. You come from the same origin. You are brothers in the flesh, siblings in the flesh. Maybe not directly, but in the web of humanity, we share the same flesh. And that means my destiny and his destiny are connected. If I don't love him, if I don't embrace his destiny, something of me is lost. So that's why we love the others as ourselves. Christ is going to teach us to love the others as ourselves, because they are really ourselves, because our destiny is connected to their destiny. Now, here what is crucial in this, here you have Giotto. This is one of the first representations of charity in the history of art. And it starts with this is connected with the heart of Jesus, because Jesus is giving his heart to charity, which is full of fruits. Charity is always fruitful. Then it will become a mother, we'll see later, become like a mother. But here you see Jesus is giving his heart, or maybe receiving, you don't know really who is giving to whom. But I would say, first of all, Jesus giving his heart to charity so that we can love with his love. So the incarnation, what is teaching us, is that Christ is the center of charity. In order for charity to be possible, the incarnation allows us to love our neighbor as Christ has loved our neighbor. That's the key. Christ becomes the neighbor. In the theology of charity, we love our neighbor because of Christ. And this is very clear in all the teachings of Jesus, especially in the Last Judgment. What you did to one of these, you did to me. Also, St. Paul, the conversion of St. Paul. Remember? Why do you persecute me? But I am not persecuting you. Yes, because you are persecuting my brothers. You're persecuting me. And Paul, later, when he was persecuted, he could think, oh, I'm being persecuted, so Christ is with me. So this word was a word of consolation for St. Paul. I'm being persecuted because Christ is with me. So it is Christ that allows us to love our neighbor as ourselves. It's his own becoming flesh, becoming like, this is my body for you. Now, this doesn't mean that I love the other like as a means to get to Jesus. Like, what is important for me is Jesus, and therefore, I need to love you because that we know that doesn't work. No? If I go to visit a friend in the hospital, I tell him, well, I'm visiting you because I am a Christian. He will say, oh, I don't want you here. I want to come because of me. Now, the point is, Christ loved us because of us. He didn't love us as a means to anything else. So when we love our neighbor as Christ, we need to love him for himself. Because this is the way in which Christ is loving him. In a sense, Christ is allowing him to look our neighbors in a different way. If you look at the Gospels, you see how Jesus dealt with his disciples. One of the things he said to them is, you are those the Father gave to me. In John 17, several times. Those you gave me. So Jesus, when he looks at us, he's saying, you are a gift of the Father to me. And then he says to the disciples, love one another as the Father loves me. So you are to love one another in the same way as the Father loves me. So the love between me and my Father is between you as well. So it's teaching us about the brotherly love through the love he has to the Father, and discovering in us a new dignity. That's the key of the virtue of charity. We are loving the other because Christ is now the neighbor. Here you have the interpretation of Saint Hilary of Poitiers. because the key here is why the two commandments, love to God and love to neighbor, are one. And why sometimes in the Bible, St. Paul says, love your neighbor, and this is the whole law. But how? Because we know that the love of God is foundational, is the first one. So how can I say, love your neighbor and this is enough? It doesn't seem to fit. It seems to be something else. St. Hilary of Poitiers says, Christ is the Son of God who has become a human being. And therefore, by loving Christ, you are loving the Father. And Christ is the neighbor. And the two commandments are the same thing, are one like the other, because the Son is equal to the Father. So by loving the neighbor, you are loving Christ, and Christ is one with the Father. So the fact that the two commandments are one is not because of the order of creation, but is, according to Hilary of Poitiers, because God has become man. So you can put this union between the two commandments depends on the incarnation. And this means Jesus is teaching us what the fathers have called the order of love. Love has an order. It's not. I remember the President Obama when he gave this speech of inauguration, and he was talking about homosexual love, and he said, all men are created equal, all love are created equal. So it seems very, no, it's true, yeah, all love are created equal. Well, it's false. Not all love are equal. The love between a father and a child is not the same as the love between a father and a husband and a wife. They're different loves. It's different kind of love because there is an order of love. The love I have for someone I don't know, but maybe suffering far away, is not the same love I have for someone who is close to me. And for my child, for example, I need to take care of if I am a father, I need to take care of my child before taking care of others that are far away. The tradition has talked about the order of love, and this is essential part of charity, and has to do with the incarnation. So there is a verse of the Song of Songs that says, order love in me, in the songs. And the fathers always interpreted that, so what is the order of charity? And here what is important is especially the order between love of God and love of neighbor. Christ has come to show us this order, the order that is between loving God and loving the other. St. Augustine said there are two kinds of love. There is, we use the word uti, which means use in Latin, but in English it doesn't work because we don't use the others. We can just say there is a kind of love that is love as a path. And there is another kind of love that is, he calls it frui, which means enjoy. And this I would translate as love as repose. So Augustine said there is love as path and love as repose, as a place in which you can rest, love as rest. So this says all the loves we have can be divided into love as path, as journey, and love as rest. And he said, well, the only thing I can love in the second way, love as resting, is God. Because our heart is made for him. So the order of love, and I started with that, needs to make clear that the rest is in God alone. So the only way in which I can love as resting is God. So all the other loves, even the personal loves for persons, are love as a path. So I love you as a path. This can be difficult. No, that means that I am loving you only as a means, that I don't care about you, that I am loving you because I am a Christian, and therefore I don't care about you, I care only to the end. No, because it's only understanding that my love to you, husband, wife, parents, and children, is a path towards something greater. So to love you as a path means that I want you to reach to God. And this is why charity always has to do with God. It's the love of God. Only to love someone is to want something good for this someone. So what do I love when I love a human being, my neighbor? What is the greatest good that I can desire for someone? Well, the greatest good is that he gets to God, or she gets to God. So to love the neighbor I love with charity means I love you so that you get to God. This is the greatest. It's not instrumentalizing the other. It's only that my love to you is a path because you are fulfilled only in God. So I want you to reach God. This is the order of love. Then Augustine says, what is the love of myself? To myself, because the gospel says, love your neighbor as yourself. How do we love ourselves? With a love of resting or with a love as journey? Well, we love ourselves in a love that is a journey. We don't rest in ourselves. Because for ourselves, we also want God. So we want to get God to ourselves. This is the fulfillment of our if not, is that we don't love God enough. If the first thing that we want for us is not God, then we don't love God enough. We're lacking in charity. Charity means I want God for me. This is why the gospel says, love neighbor as yourself. I remember when I was teaching at the John Paul II Institute, we had a doctoral dissertation, and the student said that we have to love our neighbor more than ourselves, because this was charity. It was to be overabundant, so we need to love our neighbor more than we love ourselves. And I said, well, are you sure about that? And then what does the gospel says? Love your neighbor as yourself, not more than yourself. So why can't we love our neighbor more than ourselves? Because that would mean to love our neighbor more than God. So if what I want for myself is God. What I want for my neighbor is God. This, to give God to my neighbor, this is charity, is possible because of Christ, because we have the heart of Christ. But what I want for my neighbor is God. What I want for me is God. So I love my neighbor like myself, not more than myself. This has been always the teaching of the tradition as well. I cannot go to hell so that my neighbor goes to heaven. That would be loving my neighbor more than myself. I go to hell so that you can go to heaven, because going to hell is not loving God. That's why I say, no, if I want to go to hell so that my neighbor goes to heaven, means that I don't love God enough. That's why the order of charity starts with the love of God, then love of oneself, in the meaning that you love God for you, then love of neighbor, and finally the love of your own body, of your earthly life. This is the meaning of giving your life for others, means you are able to give your bodily life for others. Okay, that's the traditional order of love. Now, it is because Christ said, this is my body for you, that we can love this way. We can have the charity in our hearts. No, charity, and here is also important, no? It's connected with love of neighbor and love of God. According to Aquinas, charity is friendship with God. This is the great definition of Aquinas. A charity is a friendship with God. Friendship means that I love another in a way that this love is reciprocated. I give, and the other is able to answer. This is the most perfect love. Because you can say, well, maybe it's more perfect that I just give and give and give. No. It's more perfect that my gift is accepted and is reciprocated. If I just give and give, there is something lacking, and something that because what I want is that the other accept my gift and respond to my gift. This is real charity. So that's why a love that is a love of friendship is the highest love, because my gift has been accepted and I can receive. When I give, what I want, what I really desire, is for the other to accept the gift and to respond to this gift. Now, so this friendship is possible. In charity, the good that is communicated in this friendship, all friendships depend on some good that we communicate to the other. In the case of charity, the good that is communicated is God Himself. Here, just to show, this is Giovanni di Balduccio, also Caritas, so the virtue of charity, and here you already see the image of the mother, and the heart of Jesus is in the mother, which is charity, and here you see they are receiving from the breast of the mother the fire of charity. It's this love of God that is communicated to others. What I want in charity. This is why also it's possible to love our enemies. So to love my enemy is to say, how can I love my enemy if the enemy is not going to respond in kind to my love? So there seems to be no possibility of friendship. Aquinas says, you can love your enemies because you love him, so that the strength of your love is able to convert your enemy so that he becomes a friend. So even if, all the strength of charity is to elicit a response of love. So even it's your enemy, but you love him so that he becomes friend. So it is the hope that the strength of your love is able to change the heart so that it's possible to love God. Now, I'm going to, this is again charity, and this is the first representation of charity. You see the heart. Now, this is interesting because what you have here is, this is Allegoria del Buen Governo, which means it's an allegory of good government. So this is by Lorenzetti, and this is the king of a country, of a city. So what you have in the whole painting is what is the common good, what a good governor has to do to take care of the common good of the people. Now what you have is charity is here. So charity is not just a private virtue that is between us, but is the virtue that gives unity to the whole church, and to the whole city. So Augustine said, the charity makes of us like one body, the church, and the church is the whole Christ loving himself. That's the expression of St. Augustine. The whole Christ loving himself. I'm going to stop here. There's more, but just to have time to questions and so on. So the third part would have been the giving of the blood of Christ. And here is the question also, the connection between charity and justice and mercy. Because Christ is giving, as I said earlier, is giving us his blood. That means he's giving us his life as expiation for our sins. So he takes into account the fact that there is in our life the sin, and that we cannot respond. So charity becomes able to heal our wounds. That will be the third moment and the whole connection between charity and mercy. So what is the meaning? What is the meaning of a charity that is able to transform ourselves so that we can love God? So mercy is not just, okay, I forgive you. This is not charity. Just I forgive you and I don't care about you. I mean, whatever you do is okay. And that would be not really caring of the other. If I just say I forgive you, okay, and whatever you do is okay, I'm not going to look into that. It's for free, I forgive you. That seems a lot, but you see there is something lacking. Because this is a lot. If God would have loved us this way, just saying, okay, no matter, then we wouldn't be regenerated. So the God of love goes one step further. It's not just saying, I don't care about your sin, but I'm going to do to love you in such a way that you are going to be able to love me by yourself, to stand before me, to receive my love and to correspond to my love. And this is why the cross is necessary and the suffering of Jesus is necessary. Because this love required a regeneration of our humanity, of our capacity to love the Lord. That's what is at stake in this last step. No, here this is a manuscript in which you see how the love of Christ, which is in the cross, reaches to the 7 sacraments, and specifically to the sacrament of matrimony. It's the priest who is joining the hands of the spouses, and so you see that the charity that comes from the cross is touching human love and transforming it, so that man and woman can love each other in the way that Christ has loved them. Let me go here and finish with this image. This is from Apollinare in Classe in Ravenna. I want to finish just going back to the question of the beginning. So, what is charity and what is Christ and Christology? What is the connection between the two? A step on the cross. Can we step on the cross? Can we, like in this movie Silence, can we say, well, because of charity to save these Japanese that are suffering, is it okay? What in the end is a symbol? We just do that. And well, we have seen the drama. Now, what is the cross? The cross is the symbol. It's not only the symbol, but is when Christ in the Eucharist we have the cross. The priest, when he is consecrating, in the different Eucharistic prayers, it makes the sign of the cross. There is a strong connection between the Eucharist and the cross. The form of love is the cross. And this, I put here the cosmic cross. You see Christ here. You see the stars. You see the cross here. Alpha and Omega, the beginning and end. No? For the fathers of the church, this was a common way of understanding the cross. The cross was not only the cross. I mean, the cross of Calvary was the recapitulation in which everything came together. Was the plan of God so that we can love Him. No? And normally, what you have is that these are the arms that embrace the whole of humanity, and here you have the connection with God. So love of God and love of neighbor, and this is interpreted in different ways, but it can be also the depth of how love, according to St. Augustine, this part of the cross is how God is also the spring of love. So it's the fulfillment, but also the spring of love, and here you have love of neighbor. So here you see, it's like not only the symbol and idea of charity, but Christ Himself has realized this charity by taking the form of a cross. And for the fathers, the cross was created at the very beginning of the world, and the cross was what kept together all things. All things were kept together because of the cross from the very beginning, because it's the charity of God that allows everything to get together. St. Justin Martyr, for example, says that God created the cross in the image of, in our bodies, because our bodies are able to do this and to take this form of the embrace. So he said, this is the example of God. He loved the cross so much that He put the cross in the image. And when He created the human being, He made him similar to Him because the human being was able to adopt the form of the cross. Now, this was before the fall, so we cannot, the form of the cross here is not a form of suffering, but is the form of love. And when St. Irenaeus of Lyons speaks, for example, again, about the commandments, he said, Abraham had the commandments in his heart. And he said, it's like the commandments, the 10 commandments, have the form of the cross as well. And he had like a cross in his heart. This is Irenaeus talking about Abraham. Even without the law, because the law of Moses was not yet, he was able to fulfill the law because he had, like in the form of a cross in his heart, the love of God and neighbor, which is the summary of the law. So you see, it is because of Christ, it is because of this cross that we can love, like God loved us. If I step on the cross, I am stepping on love. And then the love for these people who are there is no longer possible. Maybe I'm going to have mercy for them, to take care of their bodies, but the real love is not only that their bodies are saved, this also is included, but the real love for them is to give meaning and hope to their lives. So if I step on the cross, I am robbing them from the most important thing. Well, I'm going to stop here. That's just to say we have here the wounds of the church, because in this situation that we are living today, this truth of the cross, that is the cross of Christ as the center of charity, is in discussion. But our hope also is this, that this cross is not an ideal, is not something that is very beautiful but unattainable, but has been given to us in charity and allows us to love as Christ has loved. Thank you.